Silas lived a life painted in shades of grey. The vibrant colours had faded the day his beloved Martha succumbed to the fever, leaving him alone on their sprawling, yet suddenly desolate, farm. The fields that once sang with laughter now echoed with the wind's mournful sigh. Each sunrise was a stark reminder of her absence, each sunset a deepening of his solitude. He wasn't a young man anymore. Years of hard labour had etched lines onto his face, mirroring the furrows in his fields. His hands, calloused and strong, now felt clumsy and empty without Martha's hand to hold. The farm, their shared dream, was slowly slipping through his fingers. Weeds choked the crops, the barn roof leaked, and the livestock seemed to sense his despair, their bleating sounding more sorrowful each day. He tried, God knows he tried. He worked from dawn till dusk, his body aching, his spirit weary. But the farm demanded more than he could give alone. Martha had been his partner, his rock, his everything. Without her, he was adrift, a ship without a sail. The old farmhouse, once filled with warmth and the aroma of Martha's apple pies, now felt cold and cavernous. He ate his meals in silence, the clinking of his fork against the plate the only sound. He missed her stories, her gentle touch, the way she used to hum while tending her garden. Neighbors offered their help, of course, but Silas was a proud man. He didn't want their pity, their charity. He wanted Martha back. He wanted his life back. But time, like the relentless river that bordered his farm, flowed onward, carrying him further away from the happiness he once knew. He was trapped, a prisoner of his grief and the failing farm. He needed a miracle, a lifeline, something to pull him out of the abyss of loneliness and despair that threatened to swallow him whole. He felt like a scarecrow in his own fields, standing tall but utterly alone, watching his world crumble around him. His heart ached with a longing so profound, it felt like a physical pain. The weight of his sorrow was a heavy cloak he wore every day, a constant reminder of his loss. The idea had been planted by Mrs. Abernathy, the town's busybody and well-meaning matchmaker. She'd clucked her tongue at Silas's haggard appearance during one of his rare trips into town for supplies. "Silas, dear," she'd said, her voice dripping with concern, "you can't go on like this. You need a wife, a helpmate. Someone to share the load." Silas had scoffed, dismissing the suggestion out of hand. "Martha can't be replaced, Mrs. Abernathy. And I'm doing just fine." But her words, like a stubborn weed, had taken root in his mind. The long, lonely nights offered plenty of time for contemplation. He'd stare into the flickering candlelight, the shadows dancing on the walls, and the thought of a companion, someone to share his burdens and chase away the darkness, became increasingly appealing. He wasn't getting any younger, and the farm was slowly bleeding him dry. He needed help, not just with the chores, but with the emptiness that gnawed at his soul. The notion of a mail-order bride, however, felt unseemly. He'd heard stories, some good, some bad. Women lured by false promises, men seeking cheap labor. It felt like a transaction, a business arrangement, devoid of the love and connection he'd shared with Martha. He wrestled with the idea for weeks, the internal debate raging within him. He pored over the catalogue Mrs. Abernathy had slipped him, its pages filled with photographs of women from faraway lands, their smiles bright, their eyes filled with hope. He felt a pang of guilt, a sense of betrayal to Martha's memory. But the farm needed him. And he needed someone. He needed to hear a voice other than his own echoing through the empty farmhouse. He needed a reason to get out of bed each morning, a purpose beyond mere survival. He finally conceded, telling himself it was a practical decision, a means to an end. He wouldn't be seeking love, just a partner, someone to help him keep the farm afloat. But deep down, a tiny spark of hope flickered, a longing for connection, for companionship, for someone to fill the void in his heart. He carefully chose a few profiles that seemed genuine and wrote simple letters, detailing his life on the farm, his struggles, and his hopes for the future, trying to be honest and straightforward, avoiding any false pretenses. He signed each letter with a hesitant hand, unsure if he was making the right decision, but knowing he couldn't continue down the path he was on. He sealed them with a sigh, entrusting his future to the whims of fate and the postal service. The replies trickled in slowly, each one a small spark of possibility in the vast darkness of his solitude. Some were polite but distant, others seemed overly eager, their words laced with desperation that mirrored his own. He discarded those quickly. He wasn't looking for someone desperate, but someone genuine. Then came Anya's letter. Her handwriting was elegant, the ink a deep, calming blue. She wrote of her love for the land, her dream of a simple life filled with hard work and quiet evenings. She didn't gloss over the hardships, acknowledging the realities of farm life with a practicality that resonated with Silas. She spoke of her family, her longing for a place to call home, and her belief in the importance of kindness and compassion. There was a sincerity in her words that touched him, a vulnerability that mirrored his own. He felt a connection to her, a sense of shared understanding that transcended the miles that separated them. He reread her letter countless times, each reading revealing new layers of meaning, new reasons to hope. He wrote back, his own words flowing more easily than he'd expected. He told her about Martha, about the farm, about his dreams and his fears. He was honest about his age, his struggles, and his loneliness. He didn't try to paint a rosy picture, presenting himself as he truly was, a flawed, grieving man seeking companionship. Their correspondence blossomed over the next few months. Letters crossed the ocean, filled with stories, dreams, and shared hopes. He learned about Anya's life in a small village nestled in the Carpathian Mountains, her love for her family, her skills in gardening and cooking. She learned about his farm, his animals, and his dedication to the land. He found himself eagerly anticipating the arrival of each letter, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the familiar blue envelope in the postman's hand. He began to feel a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced since Martha was alive. He even started to hum again, a faint melody that echoed through the farmhouse, chasing away the silence. He chose Anya, not because she was the prettiest or the most eager, but because she seemed to understand him, to see beyond his grief and his loneliness. He saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who shared his values and his dreams. He sent her a ticket, a one-way journey to a new life, filled with both hope and uncertainty. He promised her a home, a partnership, and his unwavering respect. He hoped, with a growing sense of anticipation, that she would bring the color back into his grey world. The week leading up to Anya's arrival was a flurry of activity. Silas, fueled by a nervous energy he hadn't felt in years, threw himself into preparing the farmhouse. He scrubbed the floors until they gleamed, aired out the musty rooms, and mended the leaky roof. He even attempted to bake an apple pie, a nostalgic gesture that ended in a slightly burnt offering, but he proudly placed it on the kitchen table nonetheless. He worried about everything. Would she like the farm? Would she be disappointed by his age? Would they be able to communicate effectively, despite the language barrier? He practiced a few phrases in her native tongue, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds, hoping he wouldn't embarrass himself too much. He tidied up Martha's old room, the one he planned for Anya, feeling a pang of guilt as he carefully folded Martha's quilts and placed them in the chest at the foot of the bed. He wasn't trying to replace Martha, he told himself, but to create a new space, a new beginning. He placed a vase of wildflowers on the windowsill, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the somber hues of the room. He spent hours imagining their first meeting, rehearsing the words he would say, the welcome he would offer. He wanted to make her feel comfortable, safe, and valued. He knew she was taking a huge leap of faith, leaving her home and family to travel to a strange land to be with a man she barely knew. He wanted to reassure her that she had made the right decision. He even bought a new suit, a simple wool number he hadn't worn since Martha's funeral. It felt stiff and unfamiliar, but he wanted to make a good impression. He shaved carefully, his hand trembling slightly as he ran the razor across his weathered face. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, a stranger staring back at him. He saw the lines etched by grief and hardship, but he also saw a flicker of hope in his eyes, a longing for connection that he couldn't deny. The day of her arrival dawned bright and clear. He hitched up the wagon, his hands surprisingly steady, and set off for the train station, his heart pounding with anticipation. He clutched a small bouquet of roses, Martha's favorite, a silent tribute to the past and a hopeful gesture towards the future. He pictured Anya stepping off the train, her eyes wide with wonder, her smile as warm and genuine as her letters. He couldn't wait to meet her, to welcome her to his farm, to share his life with her. He felt a nervous excitement bubbling inside him, a feeling he thought he'd never experience again. He was ready to open his heart and his home to Anya, hoping that together they could build a new life, filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. The train hissed to a stop, its brakes screeching like a wounded animal. Silas stood on the platform, his eyes scanning the disembarking passengers. He searched for a glimpse of Anya, the woman he'd only known through letters, the woman he hoped would be his partner, his friend, perhaps even more. But she wasn't there. He watched as families reunited, friends embraced, and strangers hurried off to their destinations. The platform gradually emptied, leaving Silas standing alone, the bouquet of roses drooping in his hand. A wave of disappointment washed over him, heavier than he'd anticipated. Had she changed her mind? Had something happened on the journey? Had he been a fool to believe in this mail-order bride scheme in the first place? He waited for another hour, pacing the platform, his anxiety growing with each passing minute. He questioned the station master, who offered a shrug and a dismissive wave. Maybe she missed the train, old-timer, he said, without a hint of sympathy. Defeated, Silas trudged back to his wagon, the roses now completely wilted. The setting sun cast long, mournful shadows across the fields, mirroring his own despair. He felt like a fool, a lonely old man clutching at straws. He considered turning back, heading to the saloon for a stiff drink, anything to numb the pain of his disappointment. But something compelled him to return to the farm. Maybe she had taken a later train, maybe there was a reasonable explanation. He drove slowly, his eyes scanning the road, hoping to catch a glimpse of her walking towards him. As he approached the farmhouse, he noticed the barn door was slightly ajar. He hadn't left it that way. A sense of unease prickled his skin. He grabbed a rusty pitchfork from the back of the wagon, his heart pounding in his chest. He cautiously approached the barn, pushing the door open wider. And there she was. Curled up in the hay, fast asleep, was a young woman with long, dark hair and a face as pale as moonlight. She was dressed in simple clothes, travel-worn and rumpled. It was Anya, but not the confident, smiling woman from the photograph. This Anya looked fragile, vulnerable, and utterly exhausted. He lowered the pitchfork, his anger and disappointment replaced by concern. He knelt beside her, gently shaking her shoulder. "Anya," he whispered. "Anya, are you all right?" Her eyes fluttered open, wide with fear and confusion. She stared at him, her lips trembling. Who are you?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Where am I?" Silas helped Anya to her feet, her body trembling with exhaustion. He led her gently towards the farmhouse, his arm protectively around her shoulders. He sat her down at the kitchen table, offering her a glass of water and a piece of the slightly burnt apple pie. She ate it ravenously, her eyes darting around the room, as if expecting someone to appear. Once she had calmed down a little, Silas asked her what had happened. Her voice was soft, barely audible above the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. She told him a story that made his blood run cold. She explained that her father, Dimitri, had arranged the marriage with Silas, not for her happiness, but for the money he would receive in exchange. She had always dreamed of marrying for love, of building a life with someone who valued her for who she was, not for her dowry. When she saw Silas's letters, filled with kindness and genuine warmth, she saw a glimmer of hope, a chance to escape her predetermined fate. But Dimitri had forbidden her from contacting Silas directly. He had planned to deliver her himself, ensuring he received the payment before she had a chance to change her mind. Anya knew she had to act quickly if she wanted to avoid becoming a pawn in her father's cruel game. She had run away from home a few days before her scheduled departure, sneaking onto a cargo ship bound for America. She had no money, no contacts, and no plan, other than to find Silas and beg for his help. She had arrived at the train station, exhausted and terrified, but Dimitri's men were there, waiting for her. She recognized them immediately. Knowing she couldn't risk being seen, she had fled, hiding in the nearby woods until nightfall. She had remembered Silas's description of his farm, the location he had mentioned in his letters. She had walked for miles, guided only by the stars, until she finally stumbled upon his barn, seeking refuge from the cold and the fear that gnawed at her. She had hoped to explain everything to him in person, to beg him to understand her desperate situation. But exhaustion had overtaken her, and she had fallen asleep in the hay, praying that he would be the kind and compassionate man she had imagined him to be. She looked at Silas, her eyes filled with pleading. "Please," she whispered, "you have to believe me. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just needed to escape." Silas looked at her, his heart aching with sympathy. He saw the fear in her eyes, the desperation in her voice. He knew, without a doubt, that she was telling the truth. He had been prepared for a partner, a helpmate, but he had found a damsel in distress, a young woman fleeing a cruel and oppressive fate. He made a decision right then and there. He would protect her. He would help her. He would give her the chance to build a new life, free from the clutches of her cruel father. "You're safe here, Anya," he said, his voice firm and reassuring. "I promise, I won't let anyone hurt you." The next morning, Silas woke with a renewed sense of purpose. He had a responsibility now, a duty to protect Anya from her father's clutches. He knew Dimitri wouldn't give up easily, he would come looking for her, and Silas had to be prepared. He started by reinforcing the farmhouse, boarding up the windows and strengthening the doors. He retrieved his old hunting rifle from the attic, cleaning it and oiling it until it gleamed. He hadn't used it in years, but he knew how to handle it, and he wouldn't hesitate to use it to defend Anya. He also needed to figure out a plan. He couldn't hide her forever. He considered contacting the authorities, but he feared that Dimitri had connections, that he could use his influence to take Anya back. He decided to trust his instincts and handle the situation himself, at least for now. He spent the morning teaching Anya how to use the rifle, showing her how to load it, aim it, and fire it. She was hesitant at first, but she quickly learned, her determination fueled by her fear of her father. Silas was impressed by her resilience, her willingness to fight for her freedom. In the afternoon, they worked together on the farm, Anya proving to be a surprisingly capable worker. She had grown up in a rural village, and she was familiar with the demands of farm life. She helped him mend fences, weed the garden, and tend to the animals. She worked tirelessly, her energy and enthusiasm a stark contrast to the despair that had plagued Silas in recent months. As they worked side by side, Silas began to see Anya in a new light. She wasn't just a damsel in distress, a frightened young woman seeking refuge. She was strong, intelligent, and resourceful. She had a spirit that refused to be broken. He found himself admiring her courage, her determination, and her unwavering belief in the possibility of a better life. He also found himself drawn to her in a way he hadn't expected. He was still grieving for Martha, but he couldn't deny the spark of attraction that was growing between him and Anya. She brought a light back into his life, a warmth that chased away the coldness of his loneliness. He knew it was too soon to think about love, that they had more pressing concerns to deal with. But he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could find happiness again, with Anya by his side. He vowed to protect her, not just from her father, but from the pain and suffering she had already endured. He would give her a safe haven, a place where she could heal and grow, a place where she could finally be free. He would help her find her own way, even if that way didn't lead her to him. His protective instincts flared, making him feel younger and stronger than he had in years. He would face Dimitri, no matter the cost. Anya was under his protection now. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Silas and Anya worked together on the farm, their movements becoming synchronized, their communication growing easier despite the language barrier. Anya learned English quickly, picking up new words and phrases with an eagerness that delighted Silas. He, in turn, tried to learn a few words of her native tongue, his attempts often resulting in laughter and gentle corrections. Anya transformed the farmhouse, filling it with warmth and light. She planted a small garden, coaxing life back into the neglected soil. She cooked meals that filled the house with delicious aromas, reminding Silas of Martha's cooking, but with a new, exotic twist. She even started to hum while she worked, a cheerful melody that chased away the lingering silence. Silas found himself smiling more often, his laughter echoing through the fields. He felt younger, stronger, and more alive than he had in years. He enjoyed Anya's company, her wit, her intelligence, and her unwavering optimism. He admired her strength, her resilience, and her determination to overcome her past. He also noticed the way she looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something else, something he couldn't quite decipher. He knew she was grateful for his help, that she admired his strength and his kindness. But he also sensed a deeper connection, a spark of attraction that mirrored his own. They spent evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, sharing stories and dreams. Silas told her about Martha, about their life together on the farm, about the love they had shared. He wanted her to know that he wasn't trying to replace Martha, but to create a new space in his heart, a space where he could love again. Anya, in turn, told him about her family, about her village, about her dreams of becoming a teacher. She spoke of her longing for freedom, for independence, for a life where she could make her own choices. She confided in him her fears, her anxieties, and her hopes for the future. Silas listened intently, his heart aching for her. He knew that she deserved a better life, a life filled with love, happiness, and freedom. He wanted to give her that life, but he also knew that her future was uncertain, that Dimitri could appear at any moment, shattering their fragile peace. He tried to push those thoughts aside, to focus on the present, to cherish the moments they shared together. He knew that their time was limited, that their happiness could be fleeting. But he refused to let fear dictate their lives. He would protect Anya, he would help her find her way, and he would cherish every moment they had together, no matter how brief. He would keep her safe, and if love blossomed between them, he would welcome it with open arms. He would not let Dimitri steal their chance at happiness. The unspoken tension between Silas and Anya grew with each passing day. They found themselves stealing glances at each other, their hands lingering a moment too long during chores, their conversations punctuated by awkward silences. Silas knew he was falling in love with her, her spirit, her kindness, her unwavering optimism. But he was also haunted by the memory of Martha, by the guilt of moving on, by the fear of losing someone he loved again. Anya, too, was hesitant. She was drawn to Silas's strength, his compassion, his unwavering support. He had given her a safe haven, a place where she could be herself, free from the fear of her father. She admired him, respected him, and felt a deep sense of gratitude towards him. But she also knew that their relationship was complicated, that their circumstances were unusual. She didn't want to take advantage of his kindness, to burden him with her problems. She also feared that her past would always haunt her, that she would never be truly free. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Silas reached out and took Anya's hand. His touch was gentle, hesitant, but it sent a jolt of electricity through her. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of longing and fear. "Anya," he said, his voice soft, I care about you. More than I thought possible." Anya's heart fluttered in her chest. She knew she cared about him too, but she was afraid to admit it, afraid of the consequences. "Silas," she said, her voice trembling, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. Just let me hold your hand." They sat in silence for a few moments, their hands intertwined, the fireflies blinking around them. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with longing, with fear, and with hope. Suddenly, a twig snapped in the woods nearby. Silas and Anya both jumped, their eyes darting towards the darkness. They knew that Dimitri had finally found them. The peaceful bubble they had created was about to burst. Silas squeezed Anya's hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Stay here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I'll see what it is." He stood up, grabbed his rifle, and cautiously approached the edge of the woods. Anya watched him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that their lives were about to change forever. The growing feelings between them would have to wait, because survival had to come first. Her cruel father was about to make an appearance. Silas cautiously moved into the darkness, his rifle held at the ready. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and pine needles. He strained his ears, listening for any sign of movement. He knew Dimitri was a dangerous man, ruthless and desperate. He wouldn't hesitate to use violence to get what he wanted. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a tall, imposing man with a stern face and piercing eyes. He was dressed in a dark suit, his appearance out of place in the rustic setting. It was Dimitri. "Silas," Dimitri said, his voice cold and menacing. "I've been looking for you." "What do you want, Dimitri?" Silas replied, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "I want my daughter back," Dimitri said. "She belongs with me." "Anya is not your property," Silas retorted. "She's a free woman, and she doesn't want to go with you." Dimitri chuckled, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "She doesn't know what's good for her. She's just a naive girl. I'm doing what's best for her." "You're doing what's best for yourself," Silas countered. "You're selling her off like a piece of property. You don't care about her happiness." Dimitri's face darkened. "Don't lecture me about family, old man. You wouldn't understand. Now, hand over my daughter, and I'll be on my way." "I won't let you take her, Dimitri," Silas said, his grip tightening on the rifle. "She's under my protection now." Dimitri's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Silas. You don't want to get involved in this. I'm warning you, step aside." "I'm not afraid of you, Dimitri," Silas said, his voice filled with newfound courage. "I won't let you hurt her." Dimitri sighed, as if he was disappointed. "I didn't want to do this the hard way," he said. He gestured behind him, and two burly men emerged from the shadows, their faces grim. "But you leave me no choice." Silas knew he was outnumbered, but he wasn't about to back down. He had made a promise to Anya, and he wasn't about to break it. He raised his rifle, aiming it at Dimitri. "Stay back," he warned. "Or I'll shoot." Dimitri smirked. "You wouldn't dare." Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. He was ready to defend Anya, even if it meant risking his own life. The peaceful life he had found with Anya was worth fighting for. He would not let Dimitri take that away from him. The arrival of Dimitri and his men had shattered the illusion of safety. A battle was about to begin. Dimitri laughed, a cold, humorless sound that sent shivers down Anya's spine, even though she was hidden inside the farmhouse, peering through a crack in the boarded-up window. She watched as Silas stood his ground, his rifle steady in his hands, his eyes filled with a fierce determination she had never seen before. "You think you can stop me, old man?" Dimitri sneered. "You're no match for me and my men. I have powerful friends, people you wouldn't even dream of crossing. I can make your life a living hell." "I don't care about your friends, Dimitri," Silas replied, his voice unwavering. "I care about Anya. And I won't let you hurt her." "Hurt her?" Dimitri scoffed. "I'm her father. I'm just trying to protect her, to give her a good life. This marriage I arranged will set her up for life, she'll have everything she needs." "Everything but happiness," Silas countered. "You're selling her into a loveless marriage for your own gain. That's not protecting her, that's exploiting her." Dimitri's face twisted with rage. "You dare to judge me? You, a lonely old widower who preys on innocent young women? You think you're some kind of hero? You're nothing but a pathetic old fool." "Maybe I am," Silas said, his voice calm despite the insult. "But I'm not the one forcing my daughter into a marriage she doesn't want. I'm not the one threatening people with violence." "Enough!" Dimitri roared. "I'm done talking. Take him down." The two burly men lunged forward, their fists clenched. Silas raised his rifle, firing a shot into the air. The sound echoed through the fields, startling the men and causing them to hesitate. "I'm warning you," Silas shouted. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to." Turn around and leave, and I'll let you go. The men exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. They knew Silas was serious, that he was willing to use the rifle. But they also knew that Dimitri wouldn't tolerate disobedience. Dimitri glared at his men, his eyes filled with fury. "What are you waiting for? Get him!" The men charged forward again, their faces contorted with anger. Silas knew he had no choice. He had to defend himself, and he had to protect Anya. The time for talking was over. The battle had begun. He was determined to protect Anya, even if it cost him everything. Dimitri would not win. Silas knew he couldn't win a straight-up fight. He was outnumbered and outmatched. But he had something Dimitri didn't, knowledge of the farm. He knew every inch of the land, every hidden path, every treacherous ditch. He would use his knowledge to his advantage. As the two men charged towards him, Silas darted to the side, dodging their clumsy attacks. He sprinted towards the barn, knowing that he could use the hay bales for cover. He reached the barn just as the men caught up to him. He scrambled inside, leaping over a stack of hay bales and disappearing into the shadows. The men followed him into the barn, their heavy footsteps echoing in the darkness. They stumbled around, their eyes struggling to adjust to the low light. Silas used the opportunity to his advantage, leaping out from behind a hay bale and striking one of the men in the back of the head with the butt of his rifle. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The other man roared with anger and charged toward Silas. Silas dodged his attack, leading him on a chase through the barn. He knew he had to lure him away from the farmhouse, away from Anya. He ran towards the back of the barn, leading the man through a narrow passageway. As they reached the end of the passageway, Silas suddenly stopped and turned around. He raised his rifle, aiming it at the man's chest. The man froze, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't want to hurt you," Silas said, his voice firm. "Just turn around and leave. This doesn't have to end this way." The man hesitated, his expression torn. He knew Silas was serious, that he was willing to pull the trigger. But he also knew that Dimitri would punish him if he disobeyed. Suddenly, Dimitri's voice echoed through the barn. "What's taking so long? Kill him." The man's face hardened with resolve. He lunged toward Silas, his fist raised. Silas had no choice. He pulled the trigger. The rifle recoiled in his hands, the shot echoing through the barn. The man cried out in pain, clutching his chest. He staggered backwards, collapsing to the ground. Silas stood over him, his rifle still smoking in his hands. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had never killed anyone before. He didn't want to be a killer. But he had done what he had to do to protect Anya. He knew that Dimitri wouldn't give up. He would keep coming until he got what he wanted. Silas had to be ready. He had to defend Anya, even if it meant sacrificing his own soul. He reloaded his rifle, his hands trembling. The farm was about to become a battlefield. Anya, hearing the gunshot, screamed. She knew that Silas was in danger, that he was fighting for her life. She couldn't stay hidden any longer. She had to help him. She grabbed the rifle that Silas had taught her to use and ran out of the farmhouse, towards the barn. She knew it was dangerous, but she couldn't bear the thought of Silas fighting alone. As she approached the barn, she saw Dimitri standing outside, his face contorted with rage. He was shouting orders to his remaining man, urging him to finish Silas off. Anya raised her rifle, aiming it at Dimitri's back. "Dimitri," she shouted, her voice trembling but firm. "Stop! Leave him alone." Dimitri whirled around, his eyes widening in surprise. He stared at Anya, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Anya? What are you doing? Get back inside." "No." Anya shouted. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm staying here, with Silas." "You little fool!" Dimitri roared. "You don't know what you're doing. This old man has. Don't listen to him, Anya." Dimitri shouted, his voice laced with desperation. "He's just trying to manipulate you. He's an old man, he can't give you the life you deserve. Come with me, and I promise, you'll never have to worry about anything again." "I don't want your money, father," Anya replied, her voice filled with resolve. "I want to be happy. And I can't be happy with you." "You'll regret this, Anya," Dimitri said, his eyes narrowing. "You'll see, this old man will only bring you misery. You're making a terrible mistake." Suddenly, Silas emerged from the barn, his rifle aimed at Dimitri. He looked weary, but his eyes were filled with determination. "Leave her alone, Dimitri," he said, his voice firm. "She's made her choice." Dimitri glared at Silas, his face contorted with rage. "You think you've won, old man? You think you can just take my daughter away from me? You're wrong. I'll never give up. I'll hunt you down, I'll make you pay for this." "Get off my land, Dimitri," Silas said, his voice unwavering. "Before I call the sheriff." Dimitri laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "You think the sheriff can protect you from me? I have friends in high places. The law means nothing to me." Silas knew that Dimitri was telling the truth. He couldn't rely on the authorities to protect them. He had to rely on himself, and on his knowledge of the farm. He knew that Dimitri and his remaining men wouldn't leave without a fight. He had to find a way to outsmart them, to trap them, to force them to retreat. He scanned the farm, his mind racing, searching for a plan. He noticed the old well, hidden behind a thicket of bushes. It was deep and dark, and the wooden cover was weak and rotten. It was a perfect trap. "Anya, get back to the house," Silas said, his voice low and urgent. "And stay there. Don't come out, no matter what happens." Anya hesitated, her eyes filled with concern. "But Silas?" "Just do it, Anya," Silas said, his voice firm. "I need you to be safe." Anya nodded, her eyes filled with tears. She turned and ran back towards the farmhouse, her heart pounding in her chest. Silas turned his attention back to Dimitri, his mind focused on the task at hand. He had to lure Dimitri and his man towards the well, without arousing their suspicion. He had to be careful, he had to be clever, he had to be brave. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. The fate of Anya, and his own, depended on it. Silas turned and faced Dimitri, his expression grim. "I'm giving you one last chance, Dimitri," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Leave now, and I won't press charges for trespassing and assault. Stay, and you'll regret it." Dimitri sneered. "You think I'm afraid of you, old man? You're nothing but a nuisance. I'll take what's mine, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." He gestured to his remaining man. "Get him." The man hesitated, glancing nervously at the barn where his companion lay wounded or dead. He clearly wasn't eager to face Silas again. But he knew he couldn't disobey Dimitri. He charged forward, his fist raised. Silas sidestepped the attack with surprising agility, his years of farm work giving him a surprising nimbleness. He grabbed the man's arm, using his momentum to throw him off balance. The man stumbled forward, tripping over a gnarled tree root and falling to the ground. Silas didn't give him a chance to recover. He kicked the man's rifle away, then pointed his own rifle at his head. "Stay down," he warned. "Or I'll shoot." The man, his face pale with fear, scrambled backwards, surrendering. Silas kept his rifle trained on him, watching him carefully. "Very impressive, old man," Dimitri said, clapping slowly. "But you can't protect him forever. And you can't protect yourself. Sooner or later, I'll get what I want." Silas ignored Dimitri's taunts. He knew he had to keep him talking, to distract him while he maneuvered him towards the well. He took a step back, slowly leading Dimitri away from the farmhouse. "What do you want, Dimitri?" Silas asked, his voice calm. "Why are you doing this? Is money really that important to you?" "Money is everything, old man," Dimitri replied, his eyes gleaming with greed. It's power, it's freedom, it's the key to a good life. And Anya is my ticket to wealth and influence. You're willing to sacrifice your own daughter for money? Silas asked, his voice filled with disgust. She'll thank me for it someday. I'm giving her a chance at a life of luxury, a life she could never have with you. You're just a poor farmer, Silas. You can't offer her anything but hard work and loneliness. She doesn't want luxury, Dimitri, Silas replied, his voice growing louder. She wants love, and happiness, and freedom. And I can give her that, even if I don't have much money. They had reached the thicket of bushes, the old well hidden just behind them. Silas knew he had to act quickly. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the final confrontation. You're a fool, Silas, Dimitri sneered. You think you can protect her from me? You can't. I'll always be her father. I'll always have a hold on her. That's not true, Anya said, her voice ringing out from the farmhouse. You don't have any power over me anymore, father. I'm free. And I'm never going back to you. Dimitri whirled around, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. He didn't finish his sentence. Silas lunged forward, grabbing Dimitri by the shoulders and shoving him towards the well. The rotten wooden cover gave way with a sickening crack, and Dimitri plummeted into the darkness. Anya screamed, rushing towards the well. She peered into the depths, but she couldn't see anything. The well was too deep, too dark. Silas grabbed her, pulling her away from the edge. It's too dangerous, Anya, he said, his voice strained. Stay back. He secured the remaining man, tying his hands behind his back. He then went to the well and peered down. He couldn't see Dimitri, but he could hear him shouting, his voice echoing from the depths. You haven't seen the last of me, Silas. Dimitri shouted. I'll get out of here, and I'll come back for you. You and that little. Silas didn't wait to hear the rest. He found a large rock and pushed it over the opening of the well, sealing Dimitri inside. He knew it wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy them some time. He turned to Anya, his heart aching with concern. She was trembling, her face pale with shock. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Are you all right, Anya? He asked, his voice soft. Anya nodded, burying her face in his chest. I'm so scared, Silas, she whispered. What's going to happen now? It's over, Anya, Silas said, his voice reassuring. He's gone. We're safe now. But he knew that wasn't entirely true. Dimitri was still alive, trapped in the well, and he would undoubtedly seek revenge. I love you, Silas, Anya whispered, her voice barely audible. I was so scared, but you were so brave. You protected me. You saved my life. Silas looked at her, his heart overflowing with emotion. He had never expected to find love again, especially not in such an unconventional way. But Anya had brought light back into his life, a warmth he thought he had lost forever. I love you too, Anya, he said, his voice thick with emotion. More than I can say. He cupped her face in his hands, gazing into her eyes. He saw fear, but he also saw hope and love. He leaned in and kissed her, a gentle, tender kiss that sealed their bond. They knew that their future was uncertain, that Dimitri might still pose a threat. But they also knew that they had each other, and that together, they could face anything. They decided to call the authorities and report what had happened, hoping that they would take Dimitri into custody and prevent him from causing any further harm. They also decided to keep the remaining man on the farm as a prisoner until the sheriff arrived. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, they sat on the porch, holding hands, watching the sunset. The sky was ablaze with color, a vibrant display of oranges, reds, and purples. It was a beautiful sight, a symbol of hope and renewal. What are we going to do, Silas? Anya asked, her voice quiet. What's going to happen now? We're going to build a life together, Anya, Silas replied, his voice firm. We're going to stay here, on the farm. We're going to work hard, and we're going to be happy. We're going to make this place our home." Anya smiled, her eyes, filled with tears, began to sparkle again. "Our home," she repeated, her voice filled with wonder. "Yes, Silas, our home." The sheriff arrived a few hours later, taking Dimitri's remaining man into custody and promising to investigate the situation. He expressed his gratitude to Silas and Anya for their bravery, assuring them that he would do everything in his power to keep them safe. But Silas and Anya knew that they couldn't rely on the law alone. They had to be prepared for anything. They reinforced the farmhouse even further, strengthening the doors and windows. They kept their rifles close at hand, always vigilant. They also started to rebuild their lives, focusing on the farm. They worked tirelessly, planting crops, tending to the animals, and repairing the damage that had been done. They found solace in their work, in the rhythm of the seasons, in the beauty of the land. Months passed, and Dimitri remained trapped in the well. The sheriff eventually decided to seal the well permanently, ensuring that he could never escape. Silas and Anya continued to live on the farm, their love growing stronger with each passing day. They faced many challenges, but they always faced them together. They learned to rely on each other, to trust each other, to support each other. Years later, Silas and Anya were working side by side in the fields, their faces weathered by the sun and wind. They were older now, but their eyes still sparkled with love and laughter. They were harvesting the fruits of their labor, their hands calloused but strong. Anya paused, wiping her brow with her forearm. She looked at Silas, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We made it, Silas," she said, her voice soft. "We built a good life here, together." Silas smiled, taking her hand in his. "We did, Anya," he said, his voice filled with pride. "We did." He looked out over the fields, his heart overflowing with happiness. He had found love again, in the most unexpected of places. He had found a partner, a friend, a soulmate. He had found his miracle. As they continued to work, a shadow fell across the fields. They looked up.